All right, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining today's DreamWakers Daily Conversation. This week, our streams are celebrating Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month, and today we're speaking with Gretel Truong. Gretel is the campaign director of communications for One Community. The campaign generates awareness, shifts culture, and increases funding around criminal justice reform. She has over a decade in global media and nonprofit experience. And she's also worked as a media producer and covered major events and elections and produced independent short and documentary films. Gretel, it's so exciting to have you with us today. Thanks so much for taking the time to answer our questions.
Thank you. I love the DreamWaker family.
We're really excited to have you here today, and I know you've done a lot in your past. I've done some reading on the various things that you have been involved in your career, like filmmaking, events, communications. Can you maybe walk us through a little bit of an outline of your career and what you're doing now?
Yeah, I want to say I probably started when I was around 15 years old. I started as an assistant in a class teaching TV and multimedia production over the summer for kids. And I ended up doing that for 7 years and ended up taking over the class, but learned how to run a whole studio with cameras and produce a talk show, as well as edit and work on photo editing and sound editing and all these really hard skills that I really got to put to use once I got to college. I went to University of Virginia and got to intern and work during athletic games and do all of the live video recording and stuff like that, and get to work on the big replay board. Dreams that I really had when I was a kid, and it was like one day, I remember going to basketball games and looking up at the boards and being like, I'm going to run those one day. And I really got, I got to do that at UVA, which was incredible. And then also learned and studied film and media and worked on a variety of different student films and productions and PA'd on any set that I could possibly get my hands on. And then once I graduated, I ended up in DC, which is fortunately just next to my hometown, and worked for PBS on a pilot. That didn't get picked up, but then worked with the producer in DC for several years and really got my feet wet from everything from covering stuff at the White House and conventions to creating content in a time when digital content and digital videos were just getting started, and really cut my teeth that way, and got to work with some really incredible people. Then got asked to move to New York City to help then former Prime Minister Gordon Brown and his wife Sarah Brown start their global education organizations, and through that met Malala, who at that time was just a girl, and then obviously had gotten shot, and worked with her on her first big public speech after that, and helped produce that event where she said, "One child, one pen, one teacher can change the world," and something that has stuck with me for the rest of my life and will. And then got to really combine my love of film and my love of being able to create activism and action for great causes. And Malala's film, He Named Me Malala, got released, and I worked on that campaign and really got to take it all around the world, particularly in India and Kenya, and really work closely with organizations on the ground there. And then continued some of that work and went to GENYOUth and worked on food insecurity, which is incredibly important right now, particularly as, spent a long time learning about school meals and the importance of that. And that's something obviously that's in dire need during this pandemic. But then got an opportunity to move to LA, which was always a dream of mine, always something I wanted to do. Literally would come out here every couple of years to try to move to LA, and I got the opportunity through the campaign around the film Just Mercy, starring Michael B. Jordan, Brie Larson, and Jamie Foxx, and I've been working on that campaign now since August, and really working to help change the conversation around incarceration and criminal justice reform, and get more people involved in that movement.
Incredible. It's such a powerful book. I actually have not seen the movie yet, full disclosure, but the book is something that still sticks with me. Oh my goodness.
Highly recommend, and it is available to rent now on Amazon, iTunes, and all the things. So definitely check it out.
Great, I will. So how has your day-to-day changed in light of everything that's going on, being in a global pandemic, kind of changing to remote work? What does that look like for you?
I mean, it's been so much of the work that I was doing was in person with people in large gatherings. We were working on film screenings in rooms with hundreds of people. We were going into prisons to do work, particularly with the NBA. I mean, when stuff started to shut down, I was literally mid-trip, was supposed to be gone for 3 weeks and ended up being gone for just a couple of days and had to like turn myself around when stuff started to shut down. So it was quite a dramatic turn to a moment of like, we literally don't know what's happening or how long this is going to be. And so, now I'm very, very fortunate to be healthy and safe and have a place to stay and food on the table and a job. But I mean, we're now, again, having to move all of our meetings, all our events online, having virtual conversations just like this with people all around the world. But a lot of that is focused now on creating an emergency response, particularly for people who are in prisons and jails and detention facilities who cannot social distance, who don't have free access to protective equipment, and are really scared for their lives. And so a lot of that has been driven around creating awareness and action to help protect them, but also those who are incredibly vulnerable in this time, who may lose their jobs and may not, again, have access to basic needs right now.
Wow, you're doing such amazing work, and I just want to thank you for doing that and being that voice. I think that's really cool. You've had this career that's done so many interesting things. You've met a lot of really cool people. Was there anything that sticks out to you that was particularly meaningful, or something that just continues to stick with you throughout your career? Or maybe it's something recent. I mean, we're living in a time of a lot of, new things. So
I mean, it's really like hard to pinpoint when. I mean, I think I already said like Malala's speech at the UN, her first one. I think will always stick with me as one of my career highlights, in terms of a moment where like, wow, we have changed the world in essence, and you really saw a star being born in a way that I had never felt or seen before. And I think, moments like that too, where it is, especially I think, something that always happens in activism and also creating content is like, you hear things, you're seeing the same messaging over and over again. And it's like, oh, like when is that breakthrough moment going to happen? And seeing that happen was really magical.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's really cool. I actually have a postcard of Malala on my fridge right now. I keep looking at it. Very cool. So like I mentioned, May is Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month, and we wanted to use the series this week to highlight people from those backgrounds. And so we're wondering if you would share a little bit about how you identify and what the importance of representation has been in your life, and especially for the next generation of students behind you.
Yeah, I am the daughter of a refugee from Vietnam. My dad had escaped the war and ended up on a boat and then to Thailand, and then was resettled in Minnesota. And that's where he met my mom, who was his English as a second language teacher. And so I am mixed race, but, do identify as the daughter of an immigrant or a refugee. And as Asian from Vietnam. And I think very, very fortunate to have grown up in a huge immigrant community with people from all around the world. And so, that has meant to me, particularly because I've worked on a lot of refugee issues and have been to refugee camps in Kenya, and I've worked a lot on the Syrian refugee crisis throughout my career. So I think that piece, and that's something that I really did not ever identify until recently, until the last really several years, and started to work on those issues. I, had identified as Asian growing up, but I think not until recently, when the word refugee became such a hot topic, where it's like, oh no, that is, I am part of that story, and the daughter of somebody who literally escaped a war and was a refugee himself. And I think that's been something, again, I've been, I want to say like grappling with, but really understanding that I am part of that legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, did you grow up in Minnesota then?
I grew up in Virginia. So my parents left Minnesota. There was a huge refugee population in Northern Virginia. And so my dad had friends there from Vietnam. And so he wanted to come here, and my mom followed.
Very cool. So when you were a kid, I mean, you did mention that you started your interest in this when you were a teenager. So maybe you've always known what you wanted to do, but thinking back, what did you think you would grow up to be? And did you have people around you that you looked up to that you thought were like career role models in that way?
I mean, I think the one thing, like the one very job clear that I remember, like very clearly remember being wanting to do was to be a Disney animator. I love, big Disney fan, and was like, oh, I want to do that. And like very clearly remembering like Glenn Keane, who was the artist who drew The Beast and who drew Tarzan, and like watching the Disney Channel a lot, and like any behind the scenes stuff I was like very into. And then I also remember wanting to shoot montages for sports stuff for the Olympics. And so those were two things that I really liked. So I think like telling stories and capturing that, I knew pretty early on, and was able to follow a lot of that. And I got to see Glenn Keane draw the Beast once, and I literally cried. Glenn also won the Oscar with Kobe Bryant, and I was there at their premiere in Tribeca when they premiered that short film, obviously before his death. But that was really exciting. And so I always, and also sports plus animation was always a big thing for me. So it's been really kind of cool. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if that answers your questions, but I think in terms of role models, like there's always like different types of people, and particularly Asian role models though. I mean, I grew up in the 90s when you had Christiane Noguchi or Michelle Kwan in figure skating, which I think I only now look back on as probably played a lot, had an effect on my life, but I never thought of it. I think it's really hard when you're a kid to be like, this has a profound impact on my life. But now, like, I now can look back and recognize things like that. And, now really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So now in your professional career, you're a storyteller. You get the chance to tell these really amazing stories and bring content to life. So what does that mean to you in a professional capacity to tell diverse stories or to represent these important stories? And has it changed for you throughout your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think the world has changed throughout my career, and I've been, I think, incredibly lucky that I've got to be at some really pinnacle moments throughout history, particularly, working in DC during multiple presidential elections and really seeing that shift and change and being part of that part of history, to again help driving a whole conversation around the need for education for millions of children all around the world, and see somebody rise their star, to even now, we've got to work with the NBA really closely, an initiative we came up with called Play for Justice, and take NBA teams inside prisons and have conversations and games with them. And my mom, I think, has never really been proud of me in anything I did, but I sent her a video that I helped produce to one of those moments, and she's like, I'm so proud, right? And I think that was like one of the things, again, like it combines this need for social justice, sports, and telling stories. And like, again, there's no way to ever imagine that those moments will happen, because those moments don't exist yet, right? And I think that's something I could never really realize. I think, again, the way you have a job or the way you have a career, the way you get to do something, I think never comes up in a straight line. It always is going to bounce around, or new opportunities come up that have never existed in the world yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You can't anticipate these magical moments, but how cool that you've gotten to be part of so many of them. So our next question, do you feel like your culture or your background influence your work? And if so, in what kind of ways?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, growing up in a really diverse community and a diverse family, and with a great need of understanding multiple cultures, multiple stories, and shifting between those, I think has really affected or given me an ability to sit down with somebody and have a conversation about anything, or sit down with somebody and understand their hopes and dreams and needs for a future that I've, maybe nothing in common with. And I think that's something, that empathy, that ability to understand other people and needs and wants, I think is something that comes from my culture and from my background, that I don't think I'd, again, it's hard to understand as you're going through it, but I think I now can pinpoint like that as something that has affected me and an ability to do the work that I do. And I also think, particularly now that I've moved to Hollywood, I think, being Asian is a thing now. And that's something that I really saw a shift over the course of the last couple of years where Asian stories matter, Asian representation mattered in a way that it really hadn't ever before. And that's incredibly powerful and meaningful. And again, like allows me to even voice my own story or my own culture and have that mean something in the world. And I didn't realize, it didn't really even have value before. And I think that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this will resonate with a lot of our students because we do hear a lot of times kids are like, I want to get involved in social justice. I want my career to be making the world a better place. And we actually had a student, a high schooler from Warren County, North Carolina, who is just asking if you're interested in social justice, what suggestions do you have for getting involved and making a career out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think social justice starts small. It starts at your home. It starts at your classroom. It starts at your school. And it's about understanding, again, like, is there injustice? Is there something wrong? Is there something you want to fix? Whether it's like a broken swing in your park or somebody who may be mistreated and wanting them to be treated right, or lack of equality. That voice, finding your voice, starts small. It starts within yourself and saying like, hey, I want to speak up about it, and then speaking up about it, and then having your friends join you in that chorus, or your family join you in that chorus. And it creates that groundswell of activism, of, again, being able to create justice for yourself and for others. And and then I think that can lead into being involved in organizations that are local to you or national to you. Obviously, I would definitely recommend signing up for Represent Justice on our website, and you can learn more about what you can do to take action. And then, and using, obviously, social media is such a great tool right now. And again, being able to call people out on certain things and demand rights that belong to you. And again, that can start small and it'll grow. Nobody becomes a worldwide phenomenon or hero overnight. It happens over years and decades of really hard work that you may not see publicly.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking back to when you were young and you were full of all these dreams and exciting ideas, do you have any advice that you would go back and give yourself now?
I thought a lot about this because I've been asked a couple times, and I think I genuinely sometimes just like enjoyed being young and naive and not knowing what was coming at me. Because I think too, like, I try to learn from my own mistakes and try to watch and observe things around me. And so I think some of that is too is like just pay attention and see what's happening in the world. I wouldn't take anything back that I've necessarily ever done. And again, like, as I said, my path has never been a straight one. It twists and turns. And I, have enjoyed being on that ride, but it's never really easy. And just knowing too, like, the stuff, the older you get, sometimes the harder you're going to have to fight for the things that you want.
Yeah. I kind of love that perspective. I think I would answer similarly of just like, I want life to come at me as it's come at me, I wouldn't necessarily tell myself to change anything. That's great. So obviously working in the realm of social justice, doing the work that you're doing is exhausting and it can be discouraging, and we live in an era where that can just be a difficult space to be in for long periods of time. So what are some of the challenges or difficulties that you face, and how do you get through them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one is you are going to probably end up saying or hearing the same thing over and over and over again until somebody listens, somebody that matters and can do something that listens and really internalizes it. And that can be really exhausting and frustrating, as you said. And as I said, change doesn't happen overnight, and that, the system, particularly in the United States, as I've learned with this job, but, all over the world, is incredibly complicated. And to undo sometimes years or decades, hundreds of years of inequality or thinking, I think really is difficult. But I think the reason I love telling stories is that you can also change hearts and minds that way, right? To be able to be in your home and watch a movie or read a book or watch a video or on social media and be like, oh, that got me to think different. That got me to see another perspective. And to be able to have maybe that conversation with your friends or your family. I think that's, the one thing is, like, again, like, who knows who's going to see those pieces of content that are really, again, being able to enact change. And sometimes, again, it takes a really long time to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So kind of in a similar vein, it can be tricky now balancing work and life, and we're all inside and we're staying at home a lot more. How do you cope? Are there hobbies that you do for fun, things that you do to blow off steam or relax?
I think that's interesting because so many of the things that I did to blow off steam and relax involved things outside of my studio apartment, which was going to the movies, going to theater, and being outside, again, doing a lot, walking, like all these things that I really loved. And so I think having to learn what are some coping mechanisms and or fun stuff. I love cooking, and for the first time ever in my life, I live in an Asian neighborhood. I live in Koreatown in Los Angeles, and so I've had access to Asian ingredients, which is really exciting. And so being able to go to the store, pick up stuff, and make those recipes that don't take less than 30 minutes, that take a couple hours, is really exciting. And learning to make garlic ginger rice from scratch, or high-end chicken, and and sauces, and like all these things that I had always wanted to do and try, and now I'm being able to try it. So I'm doing a lot of cooking, a lot of potting plants. Again, I'm never home, usually traveling, and so keeping stuff alive has been exciting, and finding those little wins too. And again, being able to do stuff that's not at a screen, I think, is also critically important because I'm on my computer most work days. So finding stuff where I can do something new, finish a whole project, and again, take care of myself through food or planting.
Yeah, absolutely. The importance of stepping away from screens I have found to be very true in my life as well. So kind of taking it back, one more question about just this idea of mentorship and role models and having people who look like you doing things that you could see yourself doing in the future. Can you share a little bit about the role of mentorship in your life, and then like how those relationships may have impacted your journey, or if you wish there had been more representation, or what you hope for the next generation?
Yeah, I mean, I think to the same vein of like, who knows what the world is like going to look like. And I think like role models have come in all shapes and sizes. And I think like and looking at, always look for people that like have something that you want in kind of the way you want it, right? Like, and that is, and usually that involves a lot of having the same core values, not necessarily like a job title, or being able to do stuff at a certain level. It's always been about like, oh, do you treat people with respect, or are you able to get through a really rough transition? And so I think I've always been very fortunate to find people, mostly like a lot of women, to be able to have conversations about things that I'm going through, but also celebrate a lot of wins. I think also having a peer group, I find, is one of probably my strongest form of mentorship, of people who are around the same age as I, but also going through things. And we often end up going through things together, and being able to, again, learn from one another, I think is incredibly important. And so I've had a lot of girl gangs that I'm able to call on. And I see them as much as my friends, also as mentors who can, we can get through stuff together. And I think that's particularly in this time where it can feel really isolating, to have people that you can talk to about stuff.
Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. So this is actually our last question. Time has flown by, but we've been asking everyone to just leave these conversations with a couple pieces of advice that they hope students will take from the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think along the same veins as I think your friends and your peers, I think are incredibly important to you, and I think you should value them because you never know, the person say next to you in class. Hopefully, when we're all in classes and rooms together soon, can mean can be as important to you as somebody who may be incredibly older than you or hard to reach. I think that is my biggest piece of advice because you also know, to get stuff together. I've worked in storytelling and we're doing film and media. It is it's a team sport. Like you cannot do stuff alone. And so to be connected still with people that I was making films with in college or 10 years ago and still be able to produce stuff together is really cool to me and amazing. And I really appreciate again, those relationships as much as I do, somebody that maybe several decades or years down the road from me. Because I think, again, that's something that you can really cherish and bloom as your own careers or personal lives. And I also say, like, personal life and, like, careers, like, there is no, again, having it all in terms of everything will happen in waves. Sometimes things will be not go the way they're planned. And the world is constantly changing. And so that's what I said about social justice or jobs you may want, like those, may not even exist. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, who knew what social media was going to be, right? And I think all those things are incredibly exciting, I know, but can also feel really scary at the same time. And know that if you understand what you value and what you want in life, those are things that you can really be able to help dictate your day-to-day and get through some really incredible times.
Yeah, I think that's great advice to end on, especially in these times. So thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody at DreamWakers.
Yeah, and everyone who tuned in today, thank you so much for watching. You can join us here at 1 o'clock Eastern to keep up with all of our DreamWakers daily conversations. And in case you missed them, they are posted here on our Facebook page and also on YouTube. And you can click the link in the comments for that to see more. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.